welcome back to The Watch. So, Moana 2. Let's get into it. It is a sequel that I'm not sure many people were asking for, yet Disney did it, and I'm not sure if they stuck the landing. But today I am joined by the lady. How are you, my dear?
I'm doing good.
You're looking very animated today.
Animated. So, yes, just a little bit. Took me a second to clue on to that one a little.
Let us know, because my wife has joined me for a number of reviews, especially the Wheel of Time reviews, because she's also a massive fan of that. And we did try for, I think, one of those reviews giving me an avatar as well to balance it out. I'm not sure how, I guess, normal it looks me talking to an avatar, but
you see, I'm a little bit camera shy.
Yes.
And so I give it an avatar instead. Mm-hmm. And this way, Shad has somebody to talk to, and I may have something interesting to say on occasion.
Well, especially with girly movies like our Wicked review, and also family movies as well. And so my overall feelings for Moana 2 is that it was mostly boring, with it kind of pulls it together at the ending. I would almost say they managed to stick the ending, but I'm not sure that redeems it. It is a shadow compared to the first one. I actually love the first Moana film. My dear, what's your thoughts?
Well, I actually thought the same. I actually caught myself checking my phone during the movie, but at the end I was like, hey, they actually pulled off the ending okay. Mm-hmm. And so I was a bit neutral for it, because I'm not a big lover of the first Moana movie. Mm-hmm. Some of the music caught my attention, but it was just kind of a neutral cartoon for me.
Okay.
It wasn't on the scale of, say, Tangled, which I really love.
Mm-hmm. I really like Tangled. I actually think Tangled might be better than Frozen, and I actually think Moana might be better than Frozen as well, but Frozen gets a lot of attention because the music was so popular. Moana 1, I actually feel she goes through a really good, consistent arc where she needs to grow and overcome certain things, and it's actually a really good example of, the stereotypical strong female character done right, where she doesn't come across girl bossy or Mary Sue, where she has distinct limitations and weaknesses that she needs to learn and overcome, and she understands where she is lacking, where she needs help. Maui, she needs Maui's help in that film, and as well, I think the music is pretty good in it, and that is one of the big things that I noticed with the second one. Moana 2, the music sucks.
Look, I wouldn't say I thought it was bad. It just wasn't catchy and memorable.
Well, that's why it sucks for me, because if you're going to do a Disney-style musical, one of the bare minimums is good music. And I think about some of the classics. Like, there was the Mufasa trailer before this film. I felt nothing throughout it except at the very end, where they bring in one of the tunes from the first film. And it was like, oh, that's such a good song. And everybody's like, well, I wonder if there's going to be anything in Mufasa that's going to be worthwhile. And the only thing they had was member berries, but it also reminded me of how good some of the music Disney can actually do with some of their better films. And then when we're looking at Moana, I think some of the music in Moana is really good and catchy. Like, even the Rock's, You're Welcome.
Right, You're Welcome and How Far I'll Go.
Yep.
And those sort of ones were actually really good. But this one, I don't think the only one that even caught my attention was a throwback one that had part of How Far I'll Go.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Anything else was completely forgettable.
It actually, for a lot of the musical numbers, actually not every musical number, I'm not kidding, and this is probably one of the biggest failings of the film, felt forced. That they was like, all right, here's the topic, we need to sing about it. Some of them even felt out of place, and they don't have the narrative thrust that some of the other moments have in not only Moana, but really, when a musical is done right, the music, right, achieves something, usually does something or motivates someone or reinforces a motivation or something like that. They're expressing something important.
Yeah, usually expresses emotions and how they're going through a problem in their head and things like that. And this was just a musical number for a musical number, I think.
Yeah, most of them were just that. It was like, we need a musical number because it's a Moana 2. Let's just force it. And I think only one song kind of tries to motivate a character, and it's when Maui does his song to Moana to try and motivate her. But I have an issue with that moment in the film. Maybe I don't think the spoiler section is going to be too extensive here. It's more going to be a general discussion, but I will mention some spoiler moments that I felt did not work, but also the ending. So wrapping up the discussion on the music side of things, really, really flat and kind of depressing. I'm trying to think of the other musical numbers. There was one where she returns home and
the opening number, that one wasn't actually too bad, but it seemed a little bit disjointed and jumping around a lot.
Yep.
It didn't seem like a kind of narrative.
Yes.
follow-along.
Oh, man. The one where she's trying to motivate the people on the boat to, do a better job and get teamwork together. That one felt forced, and there was no catchy moment or tune in it at all. All right, so the main problem is, most of the film is boring. There isn't as nearly a strong call to action or threat as opposed to the first film. And it struggles along, but it does have a somewhat exciting ending with a visually impressive, enjoyable resolution. Is that what you were kind of saying, that you felt the same?
Yeah, it had moments where it felt like it was almost getting there, but then just kind of fluttered away.
Mm-hmm. Something that I can say about it is that this is a family-friendly film.
It is.
Disney didn't really try and inject any of their agenda into it. There are some, I guess you could say, remnant DNA of some of that stuff left in that is mostly negligible. You don't need to worry about it, and in isolation doesn't mean a thing. But it's kind of like the other male character, apart from Maui, is kind of like mostly useless. Is a bit of a joke, and you have the stereotypical girl in STEM who is like the engineer and she's the smart one and stuff. And that's just more kind of stereotypes that you see with modern entertainment. But
nothing worrying or anything.
Nothing,
it's a cartoon. I'm fine.
Exactly. Nothing explicit, nothing overt, nothing in your face, nothing that is purposely injected that throws you out. It was just some of those little things that you can notice that, again, in isolation, it means nothing, but you can tell that, you know, why they made those decisions. Some of the good things, I guess, is that they didn't undermine Maui's character. He still serves a really important role, and
he was actually a stronger character in this as an individual. He had more confidence in himself.
Yeah,
even though he pretended to have a lot of confidence in the previous movie.
Yeah, You're right. And they try and make Moana struggle a bit, but because she already has all the skills that she gained from the first film, she doesn't have nearly as compelling an arc to, go through, where she's already pretty good, and now she has a new quest that she's decided to go on.
She kind of starts off on a high and being confident, and then has to deal with the fact that she doesn't know what to do. For a split 5 minutes, maybe.
Yes.
And then she's back to her confident self of Beat the Day. So it was a very tiny little dip, and then back to her normal arc.
And I actually feel that moment is not set up at all. She actually flips on her motivation quite a lot, and it's a contradiction in the plot as a result. Again, I guess I'll mention that in spoilers, and we're almost at spoilers, because if you want an inoffensive... Poor average to, it's like, I would actually consider it bad the first half, and the ending, the kind of climactic resolution moments in the film, okay, a bit above average. I wouldn't call them phenomenal. I was like, it edges on the side of good, but doesn't really redeem the first half. And so it's hard for me to decide, is it a bad movie or is it a passable movie, because there's two distinct halves to gauge it on. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it did look pretty. It was,
the
animation was really good.
Yeah.
And so at least they pulled that part off. The rest of it, it's just, I don't care if the kid's watching in the background sometime.
Yeah.
I just don't think I would put in the effort to go watch it again.
Yeah, this really felt like the writing quality and the quality of the songs. Disney used to make really low budget sequels to some of their biggest films, like Little Mermaid and things, but you can tell that their heart wasn't in it. They had nowhere near the production value. It feels like the writing quality and music was of that level quality, but they've put in the effort to do the animation as good as, the first one, and it looks really good, but yeah, the story just wasn't nearly as compelling. And so if people really love Moana and they're just desperate to see her go on another, what happens next to Moana, even though it's not as nearly as good as the first film, and they want to see some of their favorite characters again, Maui and stuff. Yeah, inoffensive. It's a fine family film. It's not great, but that's kind of it. Now, let's go into some of the spoilers and the specifics, I guess, about Moana 2, because this is where I feel the issues of the film arise. The call to action, the main thing that Moana is trying to do here, is nowhere near as urgent or serious as the first film. In the first film, their island is dying, and that means like everyone she knows could starve to death and die if she doesn't go and return the heart of Te Fiti, right? And she has to find Maui. And so there's a really strong call to action, and there is some significant threat. Like, she doesn't know how to sail, and yet she's willing to brave those dangers to do it, even though she's completely out of her depth. And it shows a good measure of courage, but also struggle and conflict that she needs to overcome. That's a really strong setup for a story. In this one, there's actually no great urgency apart from she wants to find other people, because if she doesn't find other people, what did you think that? Well, like, what would happen if she didn't find the other people from the film?
Yeah, I think it was just like a personal goal that she had. And then it didn't become something that was super important until she had this vision thing that basically said that there would be no longer an island full of people if she didn't find these people. And then there was a little bit more urgency, and then there was like a timeline because she had to follow this fire in the sky, which she felt maybe that's not going to be very long. So that gave it a tiny bit more urgency, but it didn't seem like anybody was in immediate danger.
Exactly. That's where I feel it fails, where it's just she has a vision that her island people eventually die out unless they can find other islands with people on them. And it's like, and then there's like a godlike being that is calling her to do this. And that's it. And so
it was an ancestor, right? Like one of her ancestors, it was like, this is what you need to do.
Yeah.
And he was like the last
that's
wayfinder
right.
or
The wayfinder that tried to find. So she has to find this hidden island that an evil god has hidden, and for some arbitrary reason, the god had made it that if a human sets foot on the island, his spell and control over it would break. We don't really ever get to find out who that god is, why he did the curse, why it had such an arbitrary reason that would break it. And in fact, we learn very little about him, and then he kind of disappears when Moana eventually steps on the island. So because there's no strong, I guess, context as to why something happened, what, the action, what relation stepping on the island causes the resolution, and where they go at the end, there's far less emotional payoff because you know so little about what's actually going on. Now compare that to the first film, where the situation is actually very well defined. The heart of Te Fiti is stolen. Maui took it. Everything is dying, and the mechanic is you need to return the heart to Te Fiti, and that will return everything to normal. And then it has a good payoff where you find out the crazy monster god that was most desperately after the heart of Te Fiti was Te Fiti herself. And so we understand who that god was, why they're after what they were doing, and we understand the mechanic of the resolution when it was solved by the return of the heart, solved everything, and you get to see, and then we understand what happens to that god at the end. All those things are absent from the second film.
Yeah, we kind of have a very mysterious kind of enemy that is kind of defeated, not defeated. Yep. And so you're not really going, yay. You're kind of like, oh, okay, it's done.
Yeah.
Do you beat it?
Do you think they were setting this up for a sequel?
Like a third one?
Yeah, that they didn't explain where this god came from so they can have an enemy in the next film?
It's possible because it was so vague and, not really face-to-face with any sort of enemy.
Well, this is what I think they're doing with the other god in the film. There's a female god, right, that trapped Maui at the beginning of the film. And if you haven't guessed, we are in the spoiler section. I think I announced that, but I can't remember.
Did.
Yes. And it's implied that she has nefarious motives, and then it turns out no, she's actually there to help. She wants them to free the island, because the island gets free, she's going to get free from her prison. And then she helps Moana find the island. And then we don't see her again at all. That's it. She's out of the film. There's no resolution for it. Anything. And so at the moment, she's kind of serving no purpose in the larger plot. And so my only conclusion is, I wonder if they're setting her up for the next film, because now she's free because of the actions of Moana, and she actually might turn out to be a villain after all, and Moana needs to resolve it in another film. Do you think that might be what they're setting up?
Either that, or they just wrote it very confusingly.
But even then, I think even if they were setting it up, it's still poor writing, because it's a loose end. They haven't resolved anything about that plot point, or explained where she's from, why she was doing, why she got trapped, anything. It's unresolved, which is actually just poor writing.
Right, and you don't really know if she's a god, a demigod, an enchantress, whatever. She's just there and supposedly trapped there by a god.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think Moana, for the most part, is a charming character. I think she's feels the same character, but she does come off a little bit super competent. The thing is, though, there is one thing I actually quite liked at the end of the film. It seems like she is starting to get powers and almost ebb towards becoming a demigod like Maui did. Maui mentioned that he was immortal to begin with, and now he's a demigod, and his magic is tied to his hook, but also his tattoos. And it's mentioned in the first film that every time Maui achieves something great, he gets a new tattoo that just magically appears. Or after Moana achieves the great thing, saving everyone, bringing the island back, she gets a tattoo on her arm that magically appears just like Maui. And I actually think that's a cool kind of idea, that it's this story of a character through grand heroic actions moves on to becoming a demigod.
Yeah, and her oar or paddle or whatever it is also starts to
Yes.
glow and get patterns on it, kind of like Maui's hook.
Yep, and they didn't show exactly what magical properties it has at the end, but it does indicate that, because she dips it in the water at the end, and then it lights up this passageway in the ocean, indicating that it's the magical effect of the oar, and so she's getting a magical item just like Maui. And I kind of like that. I just don't think it was a fully enjoyable journey along the way, except for the very end. And we will talk more about the end, why I think the end works and it was more engaging. Okay, but Moana, she gets assembles a ragtag team of followers because she needs a crew on her boat this time round. I don't think any of the side characters were particularly interesting or entertaining. My dear, what did you think about their side characters?
I felt at first that they were weird choices to bring with you, because she apparently chose them for their specific skills and then barely used those skills.
Yeah.
She didn't say, okay, I need your skill because you are going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're strong, so you're going to man the till. Like, you've got there eventually, and you're coming in case the ship gets damaged. But that was never told them. That they just sort of came along and went, oh, the ship's damaged, we better fix it.
Yeah, and there are some inconsistencies into the way that the characters are supposed to be using their skills and why they've been brought on the boat, just like you mentioned. So these are the new side characters. You have... you can't actually see the girl, so we'll go to the bigger screen. Right off in the corner here, over there. And so if we did full screen, is she's the engineer / boat building girl. This guy is mostly here for comic relief, but he knows the histories and stories and can interpret pictures.
And he kind of, draws the stories as they're happening. So he's basically a storyteller, artist, strongman.
/ fangirl to both Moana and Maui.
Yeah.
And he constantly is like, oh, you're so great. And that just kind of comes off annoying. I think the old guy was, out of the three, he's easily the most enjoyable one, but he doesn't do much. He's a farmer.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd bring a farmer.
Why would you bring
to find other people?
A farmer on a boat. And they have him, he's taking care of plants, and the justification is that he can grow food along the journey, but it's like the journey isn't going to go that long to the point where you need to grow food along the way. I mean, yeah, you could have a quartermaster and he knows what food would store longer and stuff like that, but he's not really a good sailor, and there wasn't good justification to bring him along, and he doesn't really do anything with his plants to show the reason why he's there.
And so even just saying, we might come across plants that we can bring back and plant, well, you can manage that. Grab a few seeds, grab a few fruit and bring it back and I'll have a look.
Mm-hmm.
So he was one of the weird choices for me of, I don't know why you would bring him along apart from just having a diverse group of people of different ages and attitudes.
And the one that makes the most sense is the boat repair girl, this one right here, right?
Yeah.
Except she acts like a bit of an idiot most of the film, trying to break apart the boat as it's sailing. Like, there's literally a moment in the film where they've left their island, and she starts to try and deconstruct and damage the boat, damaging the way, literally knocking it off course because she's desperate to rebuild the boat along the way. And it's like, it just came off as bafflingly dumb. And I know
right, like if she knows how to build a boat, she knows what makes it stable and do its job. And so why would you mess with its job while it's supposed to be doing it?
Yeah. And look, they do justify her presence a bit later on because, of course, the boat gets damaged and she is able to fix it. And so, as I mentioned, she makes the most sense to bring along, but the way that they implemented her character, they were desperate to try and make a funny moment and just made her look dumb. And so these characters didn't really add anything of worth to the film. You could probably take them away and the film might be better because it wouldn't have dragged on so much.
Yeah, they probably would have been just fine with what Moana knows to do everything. She would have been able to sail the boat. She would have been able to get through all the hurdles. She probably would have been able to repair the boat when it gets damaged because it was some stitching and some carpentry work that she pretty much could have handled apart from, maybe muscles, but that was about it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The two most enjoyable characters are Maui and Moana. They are the ones that carry the film, are the best parts of the film, and the additional characters barely added, like I mentioned, added anything. And I'm trying to think, like, when they're trying to sail through the storm, they help steer the boat, I guess.
Which wouldn't have needed to have been so big if it was just her anyway.
Yep.
And so it would have been easier to steer.
Yes. And
that's about it. I can't think of anything they really contributed other than solving the problems that they made.
Yeah, and then Moana is the one that saves the day, and they don't help her do it. She just figures out, it's kind of a dumb setup where the weird demigod or god lady that looks like a villain and helps Moana out and then disappears and does not appear for the rest of the film. Her message to Moana in a song, sequence, again, really lackluster, poor song, was there are different ways to get to where you're going, so purposely get lost because you only find where you need to go by getting lost. It was a dumb logic, right? But then it comes forward at the end where they were thinking that Maui needed to raise the island because the evil god who hid the island sunk it in the bottom of the ocean. And they mentioned in the first film that Maui raised islands up to give to people. And that actually comes through. So Maui's literally trying to raise the island out of the ocean so Moana could step on it. And the conflict and the struggle and attempt to try and do that actually was done well. Like, it was a good, fun, dramatic, epic kind of moment with magic happening, and you could. It's funny is when you understand the mechanics of what needs to happen, it's more satisfying because you can see how it gets subverted or stopped and everything. And the mechanics are pretty simple. Maui has a magic hook. I don't know where you got the rope from. Do you notice how he just suddenly had rope suddenly? Maybe it was the rope on his hook, I guess. But he throws the hook down and then is trying to pull the ocean up. He's turning into a bird, flying and doing all this stuff. That all makes sense. And then he gets struck by lightning and it looks like he loses his powers. And I was like, when that happened, I was like, oh, they're having Maui get defeated. Okay. You've suddenly done something interesting.
Maybe he'll have to be immortal on the island when they go back and, deal with not having to be special. That was an intriguing plot choice that was a little bit, I guess, strong, devastating, like brave in the sense that you could be reducing Maui back to immortal. And I was like, that could be interesting. He doesn't. And he gets his powers back because
magical
reasons
at the end. But when it happened, I was like, you're starting to draw me in. This is actually starting to achieve something. Too little, too late. But it was interesting. And then Moana realizes Maui's defeated. They can't get the ocean up. And she's like, oh, the mechanic is you just need to set foot on the island, or a human just needs to touch the island, and that could happen underwater or above. So she literally dives in the water and swims down. And the evil god entity realizes it and tries to shoot lightning through the ocean at her. I don't know how that...
It's magic
works.
lightning, I
It's
suppose.
magic lightning because the water conducts electricity anyway and should be fried. But okay, sure, magical, god lightning. And Maui actually, I can't remember, because it wasn't there a bolt of lightning that someone jumps in the way of? Was that Maui doing that as well?
Well, he gets zapped trying to pull up the island,
Yeah.
and that's when all his tattoos and everything disappears, and all the engravings on his hook, and that's where you're like, oh, he's lost his powers.
And that's something
And
the other
so
side
then he's,
characters
like,
did.
Floating on the side, and they rescue Maui.
They rescued Maui.
So they
that's
did
right.
something.
They did something. And then she swims down and bolt of lightning through the water, and she just manages to touch the island at the, under the water when she gets struck by lightning, and then they fake out her death. Is she dead? Is she not? It's like she did die, but then the ancestors just brought her back alive to life. Is that? Did you get that vibe?
I felt like she died, and then they kind of just said, yawn, like they just kind of gathered together and then held hands and zapped her a little bit, and she got a glowy arm and woke up.
And I guess I'm okay with that. Like, look, we're dealing with magic, and I did like that moment when she gets the magical tattoo where it's like you sacrificed your life to try and it wasn't really saving anyone. Like, again, if there was an actual threat that her doing this would really achieve, that you could understand better, that she sacrificed her life to then save everyone else, not a vague thing in the future that your island might not reproduce enough and die out through, I don't know. They didn't explain it, right?
They didn't explain why there would be no people left. Maybe they just left.
Yeah,
we don't know.
Exactly. And so the emotional payoff is less because there was no great thing she was achieving or bad thing she was stopping. But if they had that right, this actually could have worked, because in reward for you sacrificing your life to do this grand thing, you are given a sliver of godhood almost. And that is how Maui became a demigod. And this is the path to being a demigod, where there is magical entities that can grant you. And we kind of saw that with Tafiti in the first one, where Tafiti has powers and she can grant, she made Maui's hook again and gave that back to him. And so the gods of this world can just do that. And so I could accept that, even a god or being magical people bringing her back to life as a reward. And so I don't think it's necessarily a cop-out that, they just brought back a life, it's a kid's cartoon. So there's a number of reasons why I can kind of roll with that one. But because there was no great threat that she stopped, it had less...
It felt like less of an accomplishment than the first movie.
Exactly. And that's kind of it. There was one moment that I want to talk about, which I felt was just a complete flip, where... they find Maui, and it turns out Maui was trying to achieve the same thing. He was trying to defeat the evil god, bring back the island, but he purposely did not get Moana's help because he felt it was vastly too dangerous and she would die. And he was trying to protect her life by not bringing up Moana at all. And he gets captured by that other god that's trapped, right? The lady god with the bats. And she is actually trying to get Moana to join him, and Maui thinks it's nefarious and he doesn't want to explain it. And it turns out that she wanted Moana to go with him because she thinks that only together they'll be able to achieve it. And so, again, we don't know if she's evil or not. But Maui, when he meets Moana and her friends, he is like, okay, you're going to die. This is no, stop doing what you're doing. It's too dangerous. Go away. That's his stance is no, do not do it. And then he's like, I guess helping him out anyway because Moana's there anyway, and so he's happy to see her. They try and approach the island. It's not even approaching the island. It's when they get attacked by the sea monsters first. And the boat gets run adrift and damaged. And Moana basically then gives up. And it was a complete flip. And like she was so motivated before, and with one failing, she feels lost and she doesn't know what to do. And look, it didn't feel consistent with the character in the first film where she had no idea what to do and she was just going forward into the darkness confident that she's got to try no matter what. Where now it's like one small setback, she's given up. And then Maui, literally, they give no reason to justify a flip like this. He suddenly is like, no, we have to do it, and you need to do it, and we're going to do it together. And they did nothing to justify that massive backflip where he was at first, this is bad, go away, you will die, shouldn't do it, to now having a full musical number saying how awesome you are, and it is basically just a how awesome Moana is song, convincing her to not give up and keep going anyway, and they don't give that reason. Did you notice that?
I didn't until you mentioned it, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, he went from saying you're gonna die, to let's go do this.
It just didn't make sense. And again, it robbed the emotional payoff and the literal foundation and purpose for that song moment because it didn't make sense. It wasn't justified. And then, okay, now Moana's just going to give it a try again because of song, and Maui is now fully on board. They're going to do it. And then it goes into trying to, approach the storm and the resolution as it plays out, which, as we mentioned, actually was kind of somewhat enjoyable. There were exciting moments. There were moments of potential defeat. It had, it wasn't just a straight, stale, oh, we know what they're doing and it plays out. Roadblocks are thrown in the way. The span is in the works where they have to adapt and change and try and readjust what they're doing to achieve what they want. And I was like, okay, that was the best moment, but it just took way too long to get there through boring musical numbers, annoying side characters that don't, bring much to the table. And I'm not sure it redeems it, but there we go. That is Moana 2. Do you have any other thoughts to share?
No, it was a perfectly average,
inoffensive
kids cartoon that
maybe kids would really like it.
Maybe.
We did have our 3-year-old with us, and he seemed to be.
Yeah, he only got up and a couple of times and talked to me only a couple of times. So he sat through Wicked a bit better, oddly enough. But he wasn't trying to run around or take off or anything.
It's funny. It's like when I was talking about how musical numbers need to have purpose for what's going on to either express character motivations, drive plot forward. Wicked literally came to my mind, and I wanted to mention it as I'll mention it now because now I remembered it again. Is like that's a well done musical where the musical numbers are playing really important essential roles and help lifts the story. The musical numbers in Moana, and this is probably the biggest failure, I think, how I was umming and ahhing if it was good or bad, right? Based on the boring beginning but decent ending. I think how poorly done the musical numbers makes me feel like, no, this is a bad film. This has tipped me over on the edge of bad because not only do they not help or uplift or motivate or direct characters, it actually drags things on and distracts the film and pulls it down, I felt. And so I would probably give Moana 2 a 4 out of 10.
Yeah, I'd probably do a 4 as well, just because it's one of those ones, fine for kids. I don't particularly want to put any effort into watching it again.
And there we go. Those are our thoughts on Moana 2. Are you guys going to watch it now? I know a lot of our audience probably isn't too interested, but I like covering movies like this because I have children and I'm interested to see good family films. And a lot of our audience and viewers also have kids as well, and we like to let you guys know if it's a worthwhile film. So thank you very much for watching. Appreciate you joining, my dear.
It's good to be here. I don't get here very often.
Yes, maybe we'll have you on more often. And as always, stay on watch.